Hello, I'm Monira Al Qadiri. You're in my studio in Berlin. It's a bit messy right now because I'm working towards a solo exhibition at ARKEN Museum in Copenhagen. It's called Chameleon. It's about a lot of works around my obsession with the topic of oil, which I feel is a chameleonic character in our story of the world. And I use also these chameleonic iridescent paints on my works. They are referencing the color of oil. When you spill it on the side of the street, it has this very beautiful rainbow effect. And also the color of pearls, because in my country, Kuwait, the main industry before oil was pearl diving. So I also reference this kind of color as the iridescence as the color of history in the region. And it went from pearls to oil to maybe something else in the future. My work is very shiny and fun and sparkly on the surface, but it's always hiding a tragic character. There's always a kind of darkness behind it. And this is also based on kind of my long research into the aesthetics of sadness in the Middle East, which is something I've worked on for many years. You know, the range of human emotion is very limited in let's say, the modern world. It's always seen as, you have to be productive and happy, but not melancholic and sad, even though that it informs the human experience. I'm very enamored with that idea. They used to call it sadness, the noble emotion. I feel my work has this also aspect of animation, right? It's always changing and moving depending on the angle that you're looking at it. I think the only thing that used to interest people in pearls as a decorative object was the color. It's always changing and kind of tricking your eye. And I feel that oil does that to us as well in a kind of more allegorical sense, that it's tricking us into believing that it's producing wealth and convenience, but at the same time it's destroying us. So there's this also evil, menacing character to it, even though it's colorful and fun. I studied art in Japan for about 10 years, so I feel like my work also has a very kind of heavy Japanese influence. It has this animated kind of cartoon-like aesthetic. I feel that's completely opposite to where I come from, which is Kuwait, which has a very kind of heavily literary culture. It's a culture based on stories and poetry rather than, images. And you can see that in many of my works. On the surface, they have this cartoon-like fun quality, but actually when you read about them and understand the concepts behind them, there's this very heavily kind of dark literary aspect to them. They're all kind of narrating some kind of story. I mean, my work is referencing pre-oil history, which is the pre-modern world, basically. It exists in so many different ways in different parts of the world, but I feel it was very abrupt how when oil came to the region, it just kind of obliterated all the culture and the music and how people lived completely, and it just changed the society forever. In a way, I feel like as a post-oil baby, I'm like a freak in history. I discovered the history of this company, which makes these oil tankers. It used to be a family business that would sell decorative seashells. When the fad died out and the owners of the company passed away, their kids, they decided to foray into new realms. And one of them was oil production. So they decided to make a boat, a modern oil tanker, that would take oil basically from Europe all the way to Japan and back. And they used their seashell business to create this route for the boat. And it was a success. And then there was hundreds of boats named after seashells. And then many, many decades later, strangely enough, these oil tankers would affect the actual seashells on the ocean floor through the paint that is used on the tankers. It's this reddish burgundy paint, and it causes the murex shells to change their gender. So the paint would seep into the ocean water and make them basically, the female shells would turn into males. I thought it was such a strange kind of cyclical destiny that the first oil tanker was named after shells that would later die because of this very strange thing that was happening to them. And so I started imagining a story around these shells, and what if they were two characters like talking to each other about their transformation? And so the installation kind of got called Gastromancer, became reality because of that. The title Gastromancer is, there used to be an ancient form of fortune telling called gastromancy, where people would listen to the sounds of your stomach and tell you your future. And actually these murex seashells are called gastropods. They're also kind of describing our future, where pollution and climate change will kind of destroy our world maybe, and also change biologically everything around us. But in a way we can adapt and also find interest and beauty in this kind of dystopia. And I feel as an artist, somehow, especially in the contemporary sense, I feel like we play the role of a fortune teller sometimes, whose theory is going to become real. Just need to get something out of here. Come here. So these are swimsuit fabrics. And I use these for my inflatable sculptures called benzene float. The idea is that also, oil is very omnipresent in our world. It's in everything that we use. You can't really get rid of it, even when you discard, a plastic object, it just lives forever. And so I wanted to highlight also how these materials have taken over our world, but we don't actually see them. They're somehow invisible. I also thought of using this kind of polyester material, which is made of petrochemicals, to create these works that, they're so massive and big and colorful in the space that you cannot not confront them. It's an exaggerated form, exaggerated size, also to create this oppressive feeling of the presence of these materials like benzene and naphthalene and propane gas and these things that we use on a daily basis but never think about. So this is the maquette, the set for Crude Eye, which is a video that I made. And it's based around my childhood memories of growing up around oil refineries. As a child, I always used to imagine that these are cities, like the most futuristic city I've ever seen. They look like, Manhattan or something. And I imagined that people lived in them, and these towers were skyscrapers. And it's just like this wondrous image that I have. But of course, as an adult, I understand how destructive these things are and how, they are basically poisoning the air, sea, and land around them. It's strange to kind of combine that childhood fascination with kind of the beauty of this place, with the reality of this kind of very destructive effect that it has. And the reason I made a miniature model of it is because we're not allowed to actually go to these places or film them or photograph them. And usually they say it's because of security reasons, but I think it's a bigger concept than that. I think it's more about concealing kind of the inner mechanics of this industry. Because as soon as you see how it functions, I feel like you understand the fragility of it all and also the unsustainability of it. Even when I saw kind of oil burning and coming out of the earth, and the sky was black, and it was raining black rain, and there was oil everywhere. As a child, I imagined, this is what they told us hell looks like in the Quran, and I'm going to tell all my friends about it. As a child, you have this kind of eye where, there is no kind of good and bad somehow. There's only fascination and beauty and wonder, So that's also kind of the sense I try to bring back with my works, is this, there is no didactic character to anything. It's always like this, no matter how strange or destructive an object is, it's somehow always beautiful and fascinating.